Judeo-Christian assumption number 2 that leads to the development of modern science: the universe and all of its stuff are ordered, stable, and predictable. Why am I identifying this as a Judeo-Christian assumption specifically? If we look back into the ancient Western world and the polytheistic societies that existed at that time, they didn't see their world as particularly ordered, stable, and predictable. In fact, for them, as we see reflected in various mythologies, we can see that the world was frequently disordered, unstable, and unpredictable because these gods were thought to be incessantly intervening in human affairs and therefore making human activity sometimes very unpredictable. But with the advent of monotheism, and Judaism and Christianity in particular, we see a different kind of story unfold, right? We see a story of a universe that has a beginning, that's created for a particular purpose, and has a linear progression towards fulfillment of its purpose and everything that exists within it. And everybody who exists in the world exists as a part of this story. And what would be important to a natural law theorist in particular is this idea of orderliness. Okay, natural law theory is really going to prize orderliness and prize the idea that there is a discernible order to the way that things are. And so a natural law theorist might, as an example of the orderliness of the universe, point to something like the Fibonacci series, right? So if you're not familiar with it, the way the Fibonacci series works is this: is you take two numbers, typically starting with 0 and 1. Sometimes they start with just 1 and 1, but start with 0 and 1, you add those two numbers together, that gives you a sum of 1. And then you take that sum of 1 that you just generated and add it to the previous number to get a new sum, 2. And then you take those two numbers, 1 and 2, and add them together, and you get another number, 3. And then you take 2 and 3 and add them together, and you get 5. And you can see how this just keeps progressing, right? There's a real orderliness and uniformity to the way that these numbers sequence out. Now this, in this iteration, it's not terribly impressive. You're like, bully for you, dude, you're adding up numbers. But we can take this same principle and we can create shapes out of it, what are called Fibonacci spirals, okay? And you can see here that there's a particular ratio in size and shape that exists that's we can create a spiral out of using this principle of the Fibonacci sequence. And again, you're probably thinking like, big whoop, you drew a curly line. Okay, but a natural law theorist is going to say, okay, but the orderliness that's reflected here is also reflected in the world we exhibit, or the world we inhabit, sorry. So you can see here the Mona Lisa. We can see that there's a Fibonacci spiral in the Mona Lisa. We can see there's a Fibonacci spiral reflected in the in flowers, lots of different kinds of flowers. We can see the Fibonacci sequence reflected in the spiral that seashells seem to exhibit, okay? Or even large weather patterns or storms, they seem to embody the Fibonacci sequence. In other words, they seem to have an orderliness to them that we can discover and express with this mathematical formula called the Fibonacci sequence. We can even see the Fibonacci sequence present, or Fibonacci spiral, present in the shape of the universe itself. Okay, so it's way out there. It's in the things that we create. It's in our flowers, and it's in us. Okay, so you can see that in the human ear, we can see a Fibonacci spiral. Okay, and so this is going to be the kind of thing that natural law theorists point to as evidence that the universe is an orderly place and that we exist within this order. And so therefore, discovering the nature of this order and what our relationship is to it is going to be what helps us to discover what the right and wrong ways to live are.